Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. It's another match reaction for Arsenal 3, Man United scumbags 1. Okay, let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay, make sure you guys are liking this video, subscribing to the channel, get in the chat and let me know what you guys are thinking, how you're feeling, all those types of things. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. There's obviously like layers to the conversation that we have to have. And like, I'm just going to put it out there that we were like not good. Okay. We were not good. Okay. Like, and when I say we were not good, what I'm saying is that like, we were not like the Arsenal that we know we can be when we're playing at our best. Like we know what Arsenal looks like when they're playing well. And we were not at our best today. Like, and there's still questions around how we're playing, why we look so timid, the lack of decisiveness, the lack of conviction and what we're doing up front. Like, there are questions to be had, right? But in the end of the day, what I think is so important is to be able to continue to get results while you try to work through the bullshit. And, I think Arsenal have done an okay job at doing that. I mean, we're sitting in fifth with 10 points, drawn with like five other teams or four other teams or something like that. Obviously, Manchester City are top of the tree. So going into international break without losing a game, I think with the Man United game being what it is, I am just like good, just good. Like I'm not about to sit here and complain because there are players coming back and there are players that we have within our team that if we use them, we'll be able to improve our performances. I feel like it's just so clear. And I'll be real with you guys, like just before we get into the actual like game and like what actually unfolded, is we were having a conversation like in a group chat before the game about what's going on with Arsenal and why does it feel like there's just like this insane pressure, and why do the players look like they have like literally two people like pushing down on their shoulders and like they just look so heavy and so they lack conviction, they're not playing with joy, they're not playing with freedom. And I think this team is feeling you know stress about having expectations from the beginning of the season where, the season prior and the season before that, there was no expectations on Arsenal until we were in a certain position. But in this season, there's so much pressure on Arsenal to be in that title race and fighting for trophies that we just look a little worn out. We just look not quite at the level. And you can also feel that pressure, intensity, and stress in the stadium. And you can just tell, like, it's just not the same as like last season when it was just sunny and there was vibes and we were wearing the pink kit and we were just scoring goals for fun. There is a level of heaviness and stress around Arsenal. And that's everybody, the club, the fans, the players, the manager, everybody. Right. And so, going into the Manchester United game is like, how can we get our joy back? How can we play, free flowing football again? And I did see some good football today. It wasn't every single moment. I do think that we were sloppy in some moments. Some guys looked just completely off the pace, but there were some moments where I was like, that's us. That's us. And if we could get over the fact that we have all this pressure on us, if we could just get out of our own way, I think we'll start playing better. And hopefully this win is the catalyst for everybody to just say, you know what, let's just go fucking play, because that's just what they need to do. It's way too early in the season to have this tight of an ass. We're just way too scared to play football. And that is just so obvious right now. But I'm so glad that we got the result because we can go into the international break without the constant negativity around Arsenal are not looking good. They're not looking like title challengers. They're not looking like this. They're not looking like that. and then hopefully when we come back, we can reconvene and start again. Let's see what you guys are saying. Crispy saying, let's go. Hugo says, let's fucking go, Rice. Crispy says, not the finest performance, but great match nonetheless. Majestic TV says, what a way to justify your price tag, Rice. Steve Stringer says, smile, 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 smile. I'm sure most Arsenal fans are, unless something is wrong with you, you are smiling, okay? Mr. Austin says, I'm loving the new shirt. Oh, you guys, this thing is so bomb. Like, it really is. Like, Arsenal, like, it's something like Adidas just loves us. They really do. And like this top is one of the best that we've had in a long time, I feel like. Johnson says, a great game with the win. I agree. Prince Tutu says, it was drama, 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 but we got the win, which is important. I agree. John Donut says, hey, Jess, hello to you as well. Steve Max says, this Rice talk is nonsense. He was caught up the pitch for Rashford's goal with a pathetic recovery jog. Plus, he made Horlicks for the Garnacho goal. Well, he didn't. I don't think he got caught up the pitch. The Rashford goal could be squarely put on probably Havertz. He made the bad pass to Odegaard, and you know that. But if you want to hate on Rice, who scored the winning goal today, be my guest. But I mean, that is a very significant and like hill to die on that I'm just not willing to go on that journey with you. He was our best player in the first half. Kai Havertz gave the ball away for Rashford's goal, and he came up with the big moment. So, yeah, no. Tony says, no, Jess, today is about the win. Not good is for another day. Nah, man, we're going to go through all of it because it's so important, I think, to have a holistic conversation about things. But at the same time, like you guys hear my energy, you hear my voice, you see my face. Like, I am not about to sit here and be upset because we didn't have our best game. You know, we won the game and we deserve to win. So even though it wasn't the perfect performance, and we can talk about why it was not, I'm still like an Arsenal fan, and like beating United and the way that we did it is so fucking satisfying. Like it really is, you know? So yeah. Tyrell Gunner says Kai Havertz is still not good enough. I've said it already. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. Don One says, I think we just deserve the win in the end. Exactly. Dale Carragher says, going one goal down and winning in stoppage time, it becomes Arsenal trademark for better or for worse. You know, the drama at the Emirates is just always there. You know, it was no different than any other game at the Emirates, where it is an emotional effing roller coaster. And it's definitely something that still needs to be stamped out, you know, and so let's go ahead and get into it. Obviously, like a big piece of news that had come out before the game, you know, today was that Thomas Partey is out with a groin injury, a significant groin injury that's going to keep him out of the team for 6 to 8 weeks. And so going into the game, a lot of people, I think, assumed that we would play Thomas Partey as the DM and Rice at the 8. And I think even Arteta kind of alluded to it as well, because he even said, like, before the game that he would have played a different position. So I think even maybe Arteta was going to try to play that way. And so we don't have that option anymore. And we don't actually have another player that provides that level of stability that, like, a pivot of Rice and Thomas Partey would give. And so I think we are in a situation where we're going to have to trust somebody at that left 8 for a while. And we have some options and we need to explore those. But going into this game, you know, I was kind of hoping to see somebody else in the left 8 position. I know it was a long shot, but I was like, maybe Fabio Vieira, maybe Trossard. But after the speech that Arteta made about Kai Havertz, I think he kind of had to start him there. And so we went into it with, you know, our same back 4 that we're used to. I don't think our fullbacks had the best game. I think Zinchenko was okay. I thought Ben White had an interesting game. I think he was, you know, he wasn't great to me. I'll rewatch it and see if I change my mind. But it did give me a level of comfort that we had Gabrielle and Saliba back, and I think we looked a lot more comfy back there for it. There wasn't those little like jumbly mistakes, that clunkiness, that lack of like who's going, who's not going, who's doing what, who's not doing what. And so I think that just in itself gave us a little bit of a boost. But Nketiah starts up front with Martinelli and Saka, and so I felt okay going into the game. I wasn't confident that we were going to get the win, but I didn't think like anything catastrophic was going to happen or anything like that. Now the game starts and it's very tense. Like, I know you guys felt it. It was like both teams were feeling each other out. And I thought like the first 20 minutes of the game, Man United were just giving us the ball. They were just kicking the ball to us constantly. Like, they could not figure out how to pass to each other. They were giving us the ball, but we were being equally as sloppy in our possession. I thought Arsenal have really got to like focus on what the fuck we're doing and stop just giving the ball away willy-nilly, because we know how it is. It's like we give away the ball and we are punished in the worst possible way. And it's like route one into our box if we just continuously give the ball away. And so I thought we were sloppy and a little timid in those first 20 minutes for sure. I think there's just a level of like almost like fear of giving the ball away. So we're being really safe with everything that we're doing, which last season I think we backed ourselves so much that we just popped it around with confidence. And sometimes we got caught, but we were creating chances left and right, and we were opening teams up because we were just so confident. And we're not seeing that. I think I'm seeing a lot of like, standing on the ball, questioning whether or not should I pass it sideways, should I try to split the defense, what should I do? Martinelli is getting into the final third, and I think he's a lot of times like in mid decision when he hits the ball, whether or not he wants to cross it or whether or not he wants to shoot. And guys are taking way too long to take shots. Like, we take shots when we're blocked. We don't take shots when we're wide open. So there's a lot of indecision, a lot of timidness, a lot of indecisiveness, especially in the final third, because we dominate possession so much in games that it often becomes that like the story of the game is whether or not Arsenal can convert any of the chances that they have quickly enough before somebody hits us with a sucker punch. And in this game, it was the same story where we had the chances. Kai Havertz had a point blank chance. And I think if he scores that, the floodgates could potentially open. I don't think Man United came into this game particularly confident at all. Eric Ten Hag said in his before the game that, you could talk about the tactics all day long, but if the players attitudes are not right, then what can you do? And for me, reading between the lines there is he was saying that the team did not really come into the game with a lot of confidence. They didn't really have the right attitude. And so I think if you score that goal early on, you stop the rest of the bullshit from happening. Because Man United are a soft touch. If you score one, you could score probably a couple more, because their fragility away from home against the big teams is something that's well documented. So not getting that early goal costs us because we just need to get that goal. And you could just see that Kai Havertz does not have confidence. And we were talking about this in a group chat as well. Would it not be better for Arteta to kind of drip feed him into the team rather than put this big spotlight on him? I know that it's hard now that he's made this big proclamation about loving him and giving him time, but he doesn't have to start every game. He doesn't, and it just seems like the pressure is really just too much. He's so out of form. He's just like normal things that players would do, he's just not doing. And so, when I see him miss a shot that I feel like if you drop me onto the pitch and ask me to kick in the back of the net, I could, I'm worried, and so not getting that early goal obviously cost us, because in the 27th minute, we give away the ball in possession and they run right down the pitch and kick it in the back of the net. 1-0, and I just wasn't surprised. And I think that's what's worrying now, is that it's not a surprise that these things are happening. Pratik says he is like a striker, Gavin Harris from the movie Goal 2. Ivan says, did you break up with Terry? No, I did not. Calm down. Carol says, Havertz and Saka missing sitters. Yeah, definitely. It's becoming a theme this season that um, our players are not converting quite simple chances. Saka had the chance against Fulham with his head, like he should be putting that away, you know. Aman says, I think Arteta wanted us to let United have the ball and wait for them to hoof it so that we can get the second balls in the duels. And that worked. You know, we didn't, people were complaining about us not pressing, but I was saying that like we don't have to press them because they're just giving us the ball back. Especially in those first 20 minutes, they gave us the ball so many times by just being in possession and just hoofing it forward, like you said. And so, without like a true striker or anything, it made it easy for Gabriel and Saliba to gobble those up. But if you just continuously give them the ball back, then what's the point? Some of our players that were like really, really good last season have not quite clicked into gear yet. And that could be because we're missing two fundamental pieces of that front five, front six, which was Granit Xhaka and Gabriel Jesus. You know, those two players did a lot of heavy lifting last season. They weren't as celebrated, I think, as Saka, Odegaard, and Gabriel Martinelli, but they did a lot of work in there to like, create, and the triangles were going and the movement and the confidence. And both of those players are also senior players. You know, Gabriel Jesus, like what, 27, but with vast experience. Xhaka's 30, 31 or something like that, been in the team for a long time, really knew what the manager wanted. And so when you replace those two with Nketiah and Kai Havertz, I think it's really disrupted our front line. It's disrupted our attack, you know? And so, I don't think we actually had to press Man United, but sometimes we just got the ball and just gave it back to them, or we're just sloppy, or, guys were turning into, the opposition. And it was just very frustrating first, like 20, 27 minutes, like basically the whole period of time, like from the moment the game started to when Man United scored, was very, very, very like stressful. It was. Clock Orange says we should have scored 5 goals easy. We are not clinical in front of goal. Clock Orange also says Saka was poor. Dallo had a better game. Laugh out loud. Fair enough. Yeah, I don't think Saka was at his best today. Carl Golden says if we score before 30, we usually win. And we have to score earlier. Like we have to, like Man United were so poor in those first 30 minutes of the game that we should have put them away. Like I think peak Liverpool, peak Man City, definitely put them away first 20 minutes because they were poor. They just kept giving us the ball away. They did not look good. And we kept them in the game. We really, really did. And then we gave them the goal. Like it's just, we have to like do so much better. So yeah, Roman Staden says this football is not sustainable. Odegaard was the only one pressing, and Onana had time on the ball, but United didn't allow Ramsdale the same. And I still think that our game plan was not to press because we didn't have to. Again, like Man United were just giving us the ball, and really until the goal that Rashford scored, they really didn't have any chances. It was one chance, one goal. So the plan was working for them to just hoof it long, for us to take the ball. But when we got in possession, we were poor with it. So I actually don't have a problem with us because here's the thing. If the whole team presses, think like Onana, like as much as people will slate him for today, he's the type of goalkeeper that if you press him and they are able to pass through your press, they're going to put one ball through the center of our pitch and be in on goal. We remember that. Remember when we played against them at Old Trafford? They caught us twice like that very quickly. And so I do think that our game plan in that game was to allow them to have a little bit of possession back there, pass around, but then they'll eventually kick it. And because we're not out of shape, we'll easily win the ball back because they have Martial up there, Antony, and Rashford. And that's very easy for Gabriel and Saliba. So I think that was fine. What wasn't fine is what we were doing with the ball once we got it. That's why it wasn't fine. So yeah, Anton Dunn says our style feels reactive these days. We don't take the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think the thing is like I think we are afraid to lose the ball and then be countered against. I think we're also not seeing the same pictures because the same people aren't in the team. And so it's going to take time, I think, but I think there's just a level of uncertainty with what we're doing for sure. And that's leading to like the lack of it, like the indecision and stuff like that, and why it's taking us so long to pass the ball and stuff. So yeah, um, let's see. Um, but yeah, so obviously Rashford scores. He always scores against us. I think what his last 3 games against Arsenal, he scored like what 4 goals or something like that. And like I remember like on his debut, he scored a brace against us. So he always scores against us. Like it was coming, it always does. But it was poor the way that we gave the goal away. But we score right back. And that's what was I think from an Arsenal fan's perspective, you're probably stressed out about that because it kind of like was like a relief, but also like why couldn't we just do that before? Because to be honest, like if we had just had any composure, we could have cut through them like that all the time. We could have. Why did it take until Rashford scored for us to put the ball in the back of the net, to have any sort of conviction in the final third? It was a great goal. Like it was a great goal. But I was trying to feel I was like, "Why don't we just do that before? Why did it take until Rashford scored for us to do it?" And so, like, Antonin was saying, everything is kind of, like, reactive, and we're just have a there is something there where there's a lack of confidence and stuff like that. Hopefully, this game will help them, like, rinse that off a little bit. But it was a great goal. Great goal from Odegaard. I thought the football that we played to create the space was what we're used to seeing from Arsenal, where, it's fast, 1-2 football, you break them down and, just the slowness in which we like make decisions for the majority of the game was frustrating. But that one moment showed that when we make quick decisions, we could cut them open easily. And it was a great finish from Odegaard and a great show of leadership and so we're at 1-1 at about 30 minutes in, which, should it have been 1-1? I don't know. Should have been better. Um, should have been better. Kevy Kev says, facts. I would love to see Arsenal play with that intensity from minute one. Yeah, and it's, you've replaced certain levels of intensity with players that don't necessarily have the same intensity. Like, I think Nketiah has a certain level of intensity, but Gabriel Jesus gives you just something completely different. It gives you the physicality, the dribbling, the speed, he gives you the puffed out chest, like, I'm confident, I'm going to take this ball by you and stuff like that. And he presses and he harries and he does all those types of things. And Nketiah does those too, but Jesus does it on another level. And then again, the difference between having Xhaka in the team and having Kai Havertz in the team is having a fundamental like impact on the team, and it's very like clear. It's very obvious because Xhaka knew exactly what to do. He was very well drilled and understood exactly what his role was, and he wasn't afraid to impose himself on the game. Where we've replaced him with somebody who's a lot more demure and a little bit more in the shadows or in the background of a game. And that's definitely changing the team. Like it definitely is. So yeah. Let's see. Not a focal says if we pressed Rashford would have had more opportunities. And that's how I've seen the game. I know some people want to see us press a lot more. And I know that we haven't really pressed that much recently, but I do think there's an era of like trepidation and wanting to limit the opportunities for teams to just put one ball between our center backs and be in on goal. It still kind of happened in the final minutes, like when Garnacho scored that offside goal, but we were actually pushing at that point. So I think, and we were out of shape because, we're losing the ball and stuff like that. So I think that was a little bit different, but, I'm not too stressed out about the pressing because I kind of feel like I know why we're doing it. I'm more concerned about when we get the ball, what are we doing with it? So yeah. And maybe there's also a level, you guys, like we also have to take this into consideration as well, is that we were pressing really high and very intensely from preseason last season, and we ran out of gas and we ran out of legs, like with a third of the season left to go. And maybe there's a level of let's try to make sure that we, especially with players still looking like they're coming back into fitness, let's not overdo it. let's make sure that we have the legs and the fitness later on in the season, because we ran our guts out in those first like 3-4 months, and it was beautiful. It was fun to watch, but we lost fitness at the end of the season. So, maybe it was a little bit of that. Maybe it was a little bit of that. Um, but I'm just thinking of reasons why it's because I don't imagine that like there's a reason behind it. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah. Dr. Omizia says, I'm thinking Havertz should be coming from the bench. Fabio, Trossard, and ESR deserve to start ahead of him. If you ask me, starting him the way it's been isn't doing his confidence much good. And I agree with that. I think that like there's just no reason to continuously like put him in the limelight. Like it's too hot, like he's too hot right now, like everybody's talking about him. Like 3 games in, he's the main focus on Sky Sports, on Football Daily, on fucking Tifo, on everything. And I just feel like with somebody with such low confidence, like especially when the team isn't really operating from a high level of confidence either, don't drop somebody else in there that has like extreme emotional baggage. Maybe bring in somebody that has a little bit more confidence. It's not like Trossard wasn't super confident like after preseason. I know he had a bad game at center forward, but like we know Trossard, we know what he's like. And then Fabio Vieira is starting to come into the fold a little bit more too. So maybe you just alleviate the pressure on Kai Havertz. Of course, people will say that he's been dropped. But I'm worried about his psyche because it already wasn't good as it is, and he's just being consistently put in the fire. So yeah. Almost says people getting on Havertz this season are the same ones who got on Fabio last season. Only difference is Havertz is starting Prem games, not Europe exclusively. Dividends will come. I hope so. I think um I hope so. I do. I think the difference between Fabio Vieira and Kai Havertz, though, is that like we understand the context of the situation is quite different. Arsenal fans are not patient at all, no matter what, no matter who the signing is, they have to hit the ground running. But with Fabio, like he came in with way less first team experience than Kai Havertz did, and he was coming in to a situation where he wasn't meant to be a part of taking us to another level. He was being slow cooked, like behind Odegaard in the background. And so and I also found that really weird why people were getting on him, because I was like, you guys do realize he's not here to like change our lives right this moment. But Kai Havertz is taking over from such a big figure in the team, and he has tons of experience, and he's also coming from a rival and all that context and baggage that comes with that. So although like I do understand we have to give him time, I do think the club has made a very strange decision to bring in a player like this. And even though we want to give him time, we didn't have to do this. And it's just strange that we did. But now that we have, maybe the best thing to do is just take him out of the line of fire. Arteta is big on, snatching Trossard out of the game, and who knows when we'll see Trossard again. But and he had a poor game, but how long is Havertz going to play without being, moved out of the starting 11? This could end up being another Willian situation. So yeah, Tashima says the thing is just Trossard, Vieira, and Smith Rowe are all better than Havertz. You guys know how I feel about Fabio Vieira. I think he's been knocking on the door for a long time for a start. The times that he got the start, he didn't necessarily, I think, put his best foot forward, especially in the second half of last season. But he just has something about him and he also plays really well with Martinelli, which I think is significant because Martinelli is such an important player that we have to put players around him that get the most out of him. And right now, those 2 players are Fabio Vieira and Gabriel Jesus. If he's not playing with those players, he doesn't look as good. And yes, he does go through poor form, and it's not always his fault, but chemistry, relationships, those things really matter. Balancing out flaws and stuff like that is really important. And so, I do think Fabio Vieira is somebody that maybe is knocking on the door, but maybe not quite yet. Then you have Trossard that can play there, but I don't think Arteta really loves Trossard that much. I feel like we could put Trossard in the not favorites category. and then you have ESR, who's really on the outskirts of the team. So who knows what's going to happen? But Havertz is somebody that I just don't understand why we don't just, take him out of the line of fire. I think that's the best thing you can do for people. CC, thank you so much for your super chat, by the way. I really appreciate it. Also, CC, if you are following me on any sort of like social media, I'm not sure if you are or not. Can you just drop me a DM on like Twitter or Instagram? I have something I want to talk to you about. Nothing bad or anything, but I was thinking about you the other day. Samuel says, Fabio lacks physicality. That's why it concerns me. He's actually a good player. And that's the thing about Fabio is like, there were games where he was not good. Like, it's not like I'm saying like he was good all this time and you guys couldn't see it. I just felt like it was harsh to not give him time based on what he came in with in terms of experience and the injury and stuff like that. But he looks good. Like, he looks like he's really pushing, Tawanda says Havertz is not that bad. However, he needs time. He'll come good. Fair enough. So obviously we go into halftime like 1-1, and it was what it was. It felt a little bit like United didn't really have to do much to be level in that game, but Arsenal didn't do enough on their own part to create any sort of separation from Manchester United. I thought it was an okay half, but we really needed to kick it into another gear in order to put the game away. And so the second half started, and I kind of wanted to see changes, but I knew that if you're a certain player, you're not going to get hooked. And one thing about Arteta that, I'm just going to say, and I know people will not like hearing it, but, I like to call a spade and call it what it is. Arteta definitely has favorites, and like certain players definitely have a lot less leeway than others. Some players can play really poor for long periods of my light. It just went out. Do you guys see that? Oh, God. Oh, my God. Give me a second. I was going to turn on the light. You guys see me? I'm sorry. The light just like went out. Like, that's so weird. You guys know I have technical difficulties all the time. But there's certain players that are going to play like regardless, and other players that get hooked with just one bad performance. And so even though I was hoping for halftime changes, I knew they wouldn't come. But as the second half kind of progressed, I felt like we needed something. We needed a little bit of luck, a little bit of something. Because I don't know about you guys, but starting the second half, I was not sure where the goal was going to come from. I'll be really honest. Like, I was definitely sitting there like, are there any goals in this team? Like, what's going on? Like, it doesn't feel like we have anybody that can score a goal. And I want to share my screen now because we have to talk about the penalty. I thought our little bit of luck had come, with, going into the 60th minute, and, Kai Havertz, nice little slip ball in from, I think it was Nketiah, and he goes into the box and Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Casemiro sandwich him. There's a coming together of legs, a little bit of tripping over legs and stuff like that. And Anthony Taylor points to the spot. And, for me, like, I think that, I'm still confused about what a clear and obvious error is, because Anthony Taylor looked very convinced about it being a penalty. And obviously, when you slow it down, you don't get the same level of like speed and stuff. So the contact doesn't look the same. And so I think when they started looking at it and slowing it down, of course, when you slow it down, the contact doesn't look as ferocious as it does when you're going at full speed. But he did look like he got tripped up. And like, it just was frustrating. But at the same time, I know that the barrier, the level of penalties has gone up this season. We saw that like with Crystal Palace, like when we played against Crystal Palace and Eze was in the box. Eze is a really good player, but I have to say, like, no shade, but he is always gagging for a fucking penalty. He tried to get one today as well, but like, great player, by the way, I'm just saying. But there was Rice and I think like maybe Ben White there or Thomas Partey or somebody, and Eze kind of like went by them and kind of went in between them, and it was a tangle of legs and he went down. And that could have easily last season have been called as a penalty. And this last season is definitely a penalty, but I think they are trying to up the threshold. And for me, as long as it's carried out throughout everybody, and it's not something that's inconsistent, it will be, but I can live with that because I feel like that was similar to the Eze situation, I think, to me. But you know, I thought we needed a little bit of help. I thought we needed a little bit of luck, and I was devastated when this was not called. But I want to know from your guys' perspective, do you think that this was a penalty or not? Because on first glance, like in real time, it did look like a penalty. And also I cannot wait till they get the technology ready where they can let us know why they feel like things are a clear and obvious error or not. Because in the Women's World Cup, and I know people don't like women's football, but don't let that stop you from thinking about what I'm saying. But the referees had to come out and explain their decision, and I think it gives a level of like clarity and responsibility and accountability for the referees, and it makes it easier for, I think, football fans to digest the decisions when they're happening. And in a game against Manchester United and Arsenal, when the margins are so fine and you're not giving a penalty for like a situation and you're calling it clear and obvious, I think the referee has to have some sort of like responsibility to come out and say like why. But it'll be, I think, a while before they have that level of clarity because again, they don't want any responsibility on PGMOL. They want that veil of gray area so that nobody can really come after them for anything. But this, I wanted to see that as a penalty, obviously, because I do think that we needed a little bit of luck for sure. Because I could not see where the goal was coming from, y'all. I could not see where the goal was coming from. Prime Henri says, if that was given against us, I would have been pissed off for a soft penalty. No pen for me. Martin N says no penalty, but shouldn't be overturned. And I think that's the clear and obvious. It's like a clear and obvious error means that it cannot, I feel like you cannot have ever, like, it has to be so clear that like it's objectively not a penalty. Tamina says, yes, should be a penalty. Zitch says, this is the type of penalty that United get at Old Trafford. It is, and that's the thing. It's like, we all know how this story goes. If we did this at Old Trafford, the referee becomes rattled by the fucking, fans and gives it, but at the same time, I just feel like when I seen the decision not given with Eze, and then I see this, I am comfortable with these softer penalty decisions not being called. But again, it's the level of consistency and the fact that when we play against Everton next week, or not next week, in a couple of weeks, are we going to go to Goodison Park and one of their players going to fall down after a coming together? And are they going to deem that a penalty? I want consistency. And then I also like want to know why it's clear and obvious at this point. Vamshi says objectivity, not a penalty. I would be furious if it was the other way around. Fair enough. Martin N says maybe after the Mike Dean interview, VAR refs are going to tell Anthony Taylor to come to the screen every single time. Sarah says it was a dive. What are you smoking during the game, Jess? I mean, I'm not smoking anything, but you're a Spurs fan, so I'm sure you were hoping with everything in your body that it was called off. But I don't think it was a dive, because obviously if it's a dive, he also needs to receive a yellow card for diving, right? So there is a in between, or an area where you can receive a penalty and it's overturned because the referees don't think it's actually a penalty, but the player didn't actually dive. So nice try, but you would know a dive really well. Maybe I should take your word for it because you guys watch Harry Kane for a long time, so you would know. But he didn't get booked, and it is what it is, and like whatever. So yeah, people claiming it's a dive is like, it's a little bit of a reach, but I get like when you're mad that Arsenal won the game, fair enough. So at this point in the game, I was dying for something to happen. And obviously, like, what I will say about Manchester United and, the substitutions that they made early on, I think the main one was Hoyland. I will say that I think that's a very talented player. He'll do really well at United. I mean, he had a nice little cameo. It wasn't anything super spectacular, like, or anything like that. But, you know, I felt that instant level of like dread and fear when he came onto the pitch because, he was going to make Saliba and Gabriel's job a lot harder. I thought Gabriel and Saliba did a really good job, like really minimizing some of the threat from the front three that, United initially had out there. But Hoyland is like big, strong, fast, and he really got onto Gabriel early on. And that's going to be a really good player. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how he develops at Man United. But he comes on, Garnacho comes on. They make some changes in defense because Lisandro Martinez gets an injury as well. And so they started moving things around. Their defense got weaker, but their attack got stronger or more dangerous. And I did feel like Arsenal needed to make some subs. Like, I really did think like, okay, it's time to make some subs. We're waiting a little bit too long. What the hell, And I think that's the one thing is that the subs came too late. I'll be really real about that. I think, sometimes we give the opposition a chance to give us a sucker punch. And we were, the team that needed to be pushing. And United felt like the team that was pushing. They were weakening their fucking defense more, but going for the attack. And we were just kind of like sitting with the same players in the team when it was clearly wasn't working and we needed to see something different. So, yeah. Norma is saying, check what Sancho just posted. I can't check it right now, but if you give me a little synopsis, a little summary, that would be great. That would be great. I would love to know because he didn't even make the bench and he was not injured. And so there's definitely something going on there, but it is what it is. Vox says, I'm a United fan. Obviously, I'm not going to go with the call, but being honest, there was no contact that would make it a pen. Congrats on the win. Thank you. Like, that's the thing though. It's like, I can accept that as long as we're not giving away soft penalties next week or in a couple of weeks when we're playing. Like, I was grateful that they didn't call the Eze one against when we were playing against Crystal Palace. So I have to also take that back and be like, okay, it can't just be when we go down in the box, we get a penalty. And when other teams go down in the box, you got to be more stringent, so I can accept that. Thank you for that for sure. But yeah, like, obviously, they started making changes and, Jesus comes on, Fabio Vieira comes on, and Tomiyasu comes on. And maybe because Zinchenko is not 100% fit, which makes sense because he really hasn't played in a long time. Like, Zinchenko hasn't played in a long time. And I thought he made us a little bit better, but at the same time, like, teams are very, very aware of what we're going to try to do. They're very aware of, Zinchenko / Partey wanting to do the inversion on either side. So we're going to have to be a little bit more clever about, I think we need to have the ability to create chances, progress the ball without heavily relying upon inversion. And that's the kind of the issue with having Kai Havertz in the team sometimes, because like, if they can stop Zinchenko or they can stop Thomas Partey from getting into those midfield areas and disrupting that midfield and giving us that extra person, then there's a lot of responsibility on Declan Rice. And Odegaard tends to be marked out of the game quite a bit. Like, they've learned that, they can shut him down. They'd rather shut down the right and leave the left open. And if Kai Havertz is not involved in the game, if he's not imposing himself on the game, we end up almost feeling like a man short. And so there needs to be some balancing out of the midfield because teams really know, they really, really know about that right-hand side and also Zinchenko's inversion. They're finding really interesting ways and cute ways of stopping that from happening. And so Arsenal have got to gain another layer to them. And I think that's kind of why Arteta is moving things around. But at the same time, like, we're like a midfield light in there. We're like a midfielder light. So yeah. Boy says Partey in midfield also relies on inverting a fullback, so it's no different. Havertz has more tech. The manager likes him. Boring to talk about him. Well, it will become boring to talk about him when he's actually playing well. And the whole thing about wanting to protect Havertz and give him love, the only way you can be supportive of somebody is, you can't not be honest. And I think people saying that it's boring to talk about somebody that we spent 65 million on from Chelsea, and is not a player that we ever would have thought would have come to Arsenal, that we ever needed, and is playing poorly, and everybody is looking at it like it's a strange signing. It's not going to be boring to talk about until he starts performing. And so it's really not like, I think some people have an agenda and they want him to fail because they want Arteta to fail and they're upset. But from my perspective, my vantage point is I want him to do well, but I love Arsenal more than I love Havertz. Like, I want him to do well, but if him not being in the team makes us better, that's what I want. And he needs to start performing. Once he starts performing, like he had a chance that he really should have put away today, like that's not really on the fans. Like, that's like on him. It's not boring to talk about because it's confusing. It'll always be the top of the agenda to talk about until the guy starts performing or Arteta drops him. So there's that. Anton Dunn says, imagine we had Bellingham in Kai's position. I just die. I always think about that rumor and who messed up that deal. Bellingham might not be the player that he is today if he had come to Arsenal, so there's definitely that. But yeah, like, I don't think it'll ever be a boring conversation until he starts like performing. Like, remember, we don't really talk about like Saka didn't have a good game, but we don't really talk about Saka. We don't talk about Saliba that much because they constantly perform. So how about he make it boring for us? But yeah, like, we made the substitutions and there was definitely that one chance that we should have put away where, that's what Gabriel Jesus really adds to this team. Like, that creativity, the ability to like jink left, jink right, create openings with his dribbling. He was scaring the shit out of Dalot on that side. And he was switching positions with Saka, which was giving us more fluidity, which is also opening up more spaces. And we had that one opportunity that Saka definitely should put that away. I don't know what's going on with him. He had that really good shot against Nottingham Forest and has struggled a little bit since then to really impact the game. I think the way that we're used to him impacting the game. He's working hard, and all that kind of stuff, but he's definitely not like in form. I would love for him not to go to England. Like, I would love for after this game for us to say that he has a little knock, because it looks like he needs a couple of weeks to just like rest. He does not look at 100%, but he's such an important player, and he's such a good player that we have such high expectations for him. I expect him not to kick that straight to the goalkeeper. I mean, that would have solved all of our issues right there. It would have been 2-1 in the game, or it would have been 2-1 and game done. Really, but that was definitely a really good example of what Gabriel Jesus adds to the team. And this is why when people were, obviously people love Eddie Nketiah and they really don't want there to be an agenda against him. I do think some people have an agenda, 100%. Like they do with Kai. No matter what, they want the kid to fail. Even if they play well, they won't say it. They never want him in the team. But I said it the other day that even though I agree with everybody that Nketiah is playing probably his best football for Arsenal and he deserves to start, and right now, I will always prefer somebody else in the team, and in particular Gabriel Jesus, because we're just a better team with him. And there's just players like that. Like, no matter how good they play, the other player will always be a better option because they unlock everybody else. And it's so important to get the right players around Odegaard, the right players around Martinelli and Saka and Havertz as well, because, those are the people that are going to score the goals for you. And Jesus allows those players to get in those good positions. But Saka should be putting that away 110%. Prime Henri says, some thoughts on Zinni. I thought he was great on the first half, really controls the middle and back park of possession. He just needs to get fit. Like, we know Zinchenko, what he gives and what he brings, and we definitely look better with our back line the way that it is, or was today, versus what we were doing before. Zinchenko is a very important player for Arsenal. The problem that we have is that because like it's so predictable about what he's going to do, we do have to have different layers. And that's why the Timber injury, I think, really hurt us, because Timber wasn't inverting as much as Zinchenko was, but because of just how good he is, like, he was giving us the ability to have like an extra midfielder without it being as predictable, but also having the sturdiness and stability going the other direction. And that's a huge loss for us. Zinchenko is very good, and it's very hard to stop him because of how good he is. But if you're a good team, you'll figure out a way to stop it from happening. And then we're very heavily reliant upon that. So yeah, C. Walder says the only positive about Havertz in the team currently is it feels like taking the ankle weights off when he's subbed off. I want him to succeed, but he's a weak link in the chain. I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying that. I think people feel like the only way to support the team is to not say anything truthful or honest about players when they're not playing well. And I just don't think that that's the way to go about it. I think you can want a player to do it, you can want a player to do well, but he just hasn't really kickstarted yet. And I don't know how anybody could say that he has, like, based on what we've seen. I know we all have different opinions and we watch games differently, but as an attacking midfielder, you will always be measured. Your success will always be measured by how many goals and how many assists you have, how you affect the game, how you impose yourself. And winning duels and blocking passing lanes and pressing is never going to be enough. And so that is a bare minimum requirement for a player at Arsenal Football Club. So, I'm looking for way more than that. And right now he's not giving that. And so, it will always be a topic of conversation until he plays better. Rep 187 says the last 2 games we scored 4 goals when Havertz came off. So yeah. And obviously, like, it felt like we were kind of trying to push and we had that one chance. And then the worst thing that could have possibly happened. It's not the worst. I mean, it's one of those moments where you're just like, shit, Um, it's just the worst. And that was, the Garnacho goal that was off ends up being offside. But it was a typical, Man United, like, jammy, off against the run of play type goal where, one pass, a little bit of sloppiness from Arsenal, one little pass, um, and they're in. And Gabriel, I think, did a really good job here of keeping his line. Somebody was saying that, or holding the line. Somebody was saying that, like, you know, um, uh, Gabriel, or nobody on the team thought that Garnacho was offside. And I was like, that was the commentary was saying, oh, no, none of the Arsenal players thought Garnacho was offside. And I was like, actually, if you rewatch it, Gabriel is the only player that turns to the referee and goes, what the hell? Because he knew that he was offside, because he, like, really held his run to make sure that he was offside. And we caught life, man. We caught life. I mean, that is such fine margins in the game. They score that goal, they probably go on to win the game. They don't score that goal, and then we have the opportunity to come back. And so those are the fine margins that we're working with here. And the one thing I'll say about Manchester United that they're really good at is being clinical on the counter. Like, they will hurt you in those positions. And so the way that we play and the way that they play really do, I think it suits them quite well, you know? But they finally drew the lines and he's offside. And, Mike Dean even said it. And, he is like, I think he's one of the biggest Arsenal haters. But, you know, um, even he said that, like, the technology is what it is. Like, the line is what it is. Like, offside is pretty much the most objective thing in football right now, because the technology, just like the ball going over the line for a goal, it's pretty much like it's there, so it's offside. I don't know why, you know, Man United fans are crying about it. I hate when people cry about offsides, because it is the most objective thing. It is or it isn't. And he is offside by like millimeters. Like, he is offside by so little. And so, but a lot of that has to do with Gabriel really holding his line and really trying to keep it tight. So yeah, we caught life. We really did. And so that's how tight football is. That this is a quintessential that's football game, because the up and down roller coaster, Arsenal are dominating the game. The sucker punch comes from Man United. We get the penalty. It's called back. We're trying to push. They get a goal. It gets called back, and then we score. And then we score another one. So it is what it is. Dale says, a good call by Gabriel Magalhaes. Magalish says essentially he won us the game without heads up play. Yeah, exactly. It's just so close. Dr. Omesia says Gabrielle won us the match with that. Sarah says my fingers are thicker than Lee Gunner's biceps, whatever that means. Boy says if Arteta was to be sacked, then that season with William before December was time to do it. No point in whining about him now. It's just needlessly decisive. Fair enough. Gigantesco says, I don't understand why Man United fans are saying we were lucky. I think we were the better side for most of the game. XG Arsenal 2.56 to their 0.94. And I think here's the thing is, and I'll go back to, again, the game is such fine margins and they basically got a taste of their own medicine. I think when we played against them in early last season, around the same time, actually, or we may have played a couple more games, but we played them at Old Trafford and the game was very, very close. And we had a goal called back for that, foul that Odegaard supposedly made on Eriksen. That was our chance to go, 2-1 up, or something like that. And like they called that back and then they score a goal like towards the end of the game. After the game it was close. We had chances too. And Rashford scores the first goal, one pass just straight down the gut, and then another one quickly right after. And the game ends 3-1. And they're saying that they battered us, but we're saying that it was close. And so the game was close. Like the game was not a 3-1 game. It just like when you watched it, it was much closer. I think we had the better chances and we deserved to win because the team that deserves to win is the one that puts the ball in the back of the net more than the other team. That is how football works. You can be the better team and still not deserve to win. And so I don't think Man United were the better team and they definitely didn't deserve to win, but the game was closer than the 3-1 scoreline says. But I don't really care because that's football. And, they have to look at their game plan, the decision to bring on like Johnny Evans. They have to think about the things that they did in order to get to that point. But we put the ball in the back of the net more times than they did. And so they can suck it as far as I'm concerned. Joe says both teams were very poor. Man City and Liverpool would have ended them by halftime. Fair enough. Brian says Saka seems mentally off in the last few games. I hope he gets switched on after the break. Kudus would have hit that switch, in my opinion. Maybe, maybe not having anybody, potentially to take your spot could definitely, have complacency enter the room a little bit. But yeah, he wasn't great. But knowing Saka, he'll come good at some point. He will. I don't have to. I'm not that worried about him, to be honest. Eddie said each team had moments. I agree with that. But in the end of the day, like if you're at the end of the game and you lost and you're complaining because like, you felt like you had chances, then you have to look at why you didn't capitalize on those chances. When we lose games, most of the time, I focus on what we didn't do right. And focusing on an offside call that's 100% offside because the lines are there. It's like it's electronically drawn. Like it's not like the referee. It's in the system. Like, you know what I mean? Like Man United fans have to look at why they didn't get the 3 points there. And Arsenal fans, like we won because ultimately we scored more goals than them. And that's the game. That's the game. Dale Carragher says the most annoying word in football is deserved. I hate when Arteta uses it. I hate it as well because I just feel like you deserve to win. Like, unless you had like an egregious call go against you, like something like the worst thing. And we know what those are like in history. We've seen them before, not like the penalty subjective call thing, something really, really poor that went against you that should never go against you, that caused you to lose the game. I can understand that. But most of the time, you deserve what you get. And the team that deserves to win the game is the one that scores more goals, period, point blank. So yeah, when we went to Old Trafford and we lost, they deserved to win. But I thought that game was a lot more even than the scoreline showed. But we didn't deserve anything because we crapped the bed. And that's just the end of it, Eddie says, I completely agree. It makes no difference if you complain in the end. And I like to focus on, you know, what we didn't do, because I think in most games we could beat any team on the day. But, there are moments that we have where we could have done better, you know? And I hate focusing on refereeing decisions because it's just long, it's just, it's, how they are. They suck, so I rather not focus on all the refereeing decisions and focus on what we could have done better. So going into what we did better, can we talk about Declan Rice? Like, I think that in the first half, I watched that game and I felt like he was the best player on the pitch. I thought he was reliable in possession. He was winning his duels. He was getting stuck in. He looked calm. He looked cool. He looked collected. He looked like somebody that had been there, done it before, worn the t-shirt. Like, he just looked the part. And he was really controlling the midfield. Like, Bruno Fernandes was a myth in that game. Like, he really didn't exist. And I think a lot of that had to do with Declan Rice and how he was intercepting play and getting into the duels and stuff like that. And I thought even in possession, he was really good. But the real difference that I think Declan Rice is going to make for us is, and I said this before the game as well, is against the big teams. I think he makes a difference because he just seems to have that about him. And he was hyped for this game. He didn't look scared. He didn't look like he had the same pressure that the rest of the players had. Like, and albeit like he ended his season on a real high with West Ham, like winning the Europa Conference League and all that kind of stuff, where the rest of our team went through a really like emotionally draining title race where they didn't end up winning. And so he comes in with like a clean slate and like freedom and excitement, to be at Arsenal. You could just see it. It's pumping through his veins, and the goal that he scores, it's not like a worldie, but it's the clutch goal that you need in the moment to win the game. And I know in the title I said it's a debut goal. It's not a goal on his debut, but it's his first goal. You guys know what I fucking mean, right? But for him to get his first goal against United was just like, that's my guy. Like, I love him so much. I was telling my friends that, like, he just fits us so well. Like, he's just an Arsenal player, isn't he? He knows what it means. He knows that you have to go into a game against Man United. You have to be ready. You have to be tapped in. Okay. You have to be tapped in. You have to be locked in. You have to be ready to fight. And no, it's not always pretty, but you have to get the 3 points. And, we take the corner, it goes off of his chest and he hits it on the like half volley into that corner. And had a little bit of flexion on it. Who cares? He scored the goal. Celebrate it. I mean, you could see what it meant to him. The knee slide, everything. The guy is just, he is going to change things for us. If we could just get the right combination in front of him, we'll be fine. We'll be more than fine because he is just such a good player. And so for me, he was a man of the match. I think it's obvious that he was a man of the match. He was not perfect. He did make some mistakes, but like, he's just a really good player. Like, he looks the part, doesn't he? And so I just love him. I just love him. Ivy says Declan Rice showed his leadership ability. I like his mentality. I think this is why Arteta signed him. Exactly. Hugo says the composure to chest it down and hit low and not boot it into the stands. Exactly. Martin N says, agree, Rice is amazing. Sarah says he is stiff and slow. BS Bourne says Arteta. Oh, I can't read this. What is the language? Hold on. Can anybody translate this for me so I can know what this says? Because I can't read it, but I want to be able to read this comment. So if anybody can do me a favor and translate that, I would really appreciate it. Anton Dunn says he's the only one that isn't reactive. He tries to move things forward, and I enjoy that, which is why I think he can play with Jorginho and an 8 double pivot. Maybe that's something that I think we could try. I think you hit the nail on the head that he seems to want to make things happen, and he doesn't have that, like, he wants to go after the ball, and he's a lot better than he was when he first came, because like you could see that he's already growing as a player, because early on, like it's specifically when we played against Manchester United and at MetLife, and there was one ball that he tried to go for and he missed it, and he made the recovery, but he was out of position. And then there was one against Monaco where same thing. It's like he went to go get the ball, but he was out of position, and then he got caught. And you can tell that he's picking and choosing his moments on when he's going to go for it or when he's going to stay back, when he's going to, try to intercept and when he's not. And he spoke about this a lot, like, especially like with Rio Ferdinand, when I think it was Rio Ferdinand, when they did that like interview with him. And he spoke about like not moving so much. And, as somebody that's very eager and somebody that's also not used to playing as a lone six, you have to know when to just be still, because if you're not and you get caught, you leave everybody exposed. And you've even seen that a little bit with like Caicedo. They're trying to play him in like that sixth role, and he's moving a lot. And when you watch Rodri play, who's the best DM in the world, and I just feel like people need to just accept it, is he doesn't move that much. Like you don't see him move a lot. Like he's not going forward, and he's not ever really out of position. He picks his moments to, move forward, move back a little bit, but ultimately he just kind of like stays in his position. And you've seen a lot more of that with Rice too, like picking his moments, not getting caught out. But the guy is just like a duel monster. He wins his duels. He gets stuck in. He leaves them in his wake. I love that shit. And just watching the United players just rolling around on the ground trying to get a foul, and he's just walking away with the ball. It was juicy. I loved it. I loved it. Martin says the message was Italian, saying Arteta should not let Havertz play. Jesus and Vieira came in and changed the game with that. I kind of agree. So yeah, we definitely agree on that. That like Jesus and Vieira did change the game, and I think from here, like Jesus will start like beyond like international break. He'll start, and then I think a decision has to be made on the left center mid position. It's such an important one for us, and Vieira's pushing. Maybe Arteta views Vieira as a better finisher. Somebody that can come in and change the game. But I've also seen him start for Arsenal against Brentford. And then, Xhaka got injured quite early in the game against Wolves, and he came in and he was really good. So I think he could start for us. It's just whether or not Arteta feels like it's the right time to make a change. Dr. Omizia says Rice is fast becoming fans' favorite, and I'm loving it. I think he became a fan favorite once he chose us. I think that was just like a big statement, and I think it really made Arsenal fans just like, wow, somebody actually chose us for once. A big player chose us. He could have went to Pep and played for Man City, but he went to us instead. And so I always felt like he'd be like a fan favorite from minute one, but like he really has just meshed into the group and makes a difference. And I think once everything ahead of him starts to click, we'll be able to talk about his performances a lot more, because I actually thought he was really good against Crystal Palace and also very good against Fulham, but we didn't really get a chance to talk about it that much because as a team, we weren't great. So yeah, I loved him. Dale says Rice is a unique defender. He waits, then pounces. I love it. I love him so much. He's great. And to do it against United, thank you. I love it. Owen says, as much as Jesus has to start now, Eddie has played well today. As one of the leaders of Eddie isn't good enough. Club deserves his credit. And again, like I do think Eddie, he worked really hard. He tried to do a lot of things, but the attack is disjointed. And so if Eddie is not allowed to just get on the end of things, I think he ends up not kind of getting lost a little bit. And so we saw like, against Fulham when he came on and we were pushing and he was just trying to get on the ends of things and not trying to help build play or anything like that. He was a lot more effective. And so with Eddie, I do think he'll end up being somebody good to bring off of the bench. And when we're pushing to win games, him and Vieira, I think, are like a lock for that, because when we have a lot of possession and Vieira could just get on the ball, he's really good at putting the ball on a plate. And who's the best at getting in those positions to put the ball in the back of the net when it's on a plate is Eddie Nketiah, right? So, but Jesus, gives us what we need from the start. And so I'm happy that, he's looking more fit and ready to play. He definitely doesn't look like his like peak self, but it's good that he can make a difference and score a goal, Jesus, like even when he's not at 100%, which is great. Anton Dunn says Eddie should be swapped with Tony, 20 million, plus 20 million in Jan. He's a Brentford starter, sadly, not an Arsenal one. Yeah, you can not really be Arsenal level, but also, be somebody that contributes to the team. And I think Eddie is just treading that line. I think he's just on that line of, you know, he's playing really well and he's offering something to us, but we know in order to go to the next level, we need something a little bit different. But I can always like accept a really good performance, as it is. Um, you know, Irritated TV says the United coach Drew Peacock was really angry with Arteta. I don't give a shit. I don't care. Like, suck it. Like, we won the game and we won it fair and square. You could just get over it. Mulo says it's gonna be even better when Partey is back and they are in the midfield together. That will be a while from now. And Keenan says Havertz played better, but he is still levels below Trossard. Vieira is in better form right now. That miss, I think, will just be burned into people's heads. I think you got to be putting that away at this level. And it just shows how low his confidence is, because a confident Havertz, I think, still puts that in the back of the net. And so, yeah, Arteta has some decisions to make, but, there you go. And last but not least, obviously, Gabriel Jesus scores the goal and the third goal. But again, Fabio Vieira came on and, he has is that final ball. And I've always said this about Odegaard, is that I don't always think he's going to be the biggest assister, because sometimes I do think that he's the pass before the pass. He has a great pass on him. Like he definitely has that about him. But Fabio Vieira is the guy that Odegaard passes to, and then Vieira puts it on a plate for somebody. And we saw with the ball that he put in for Gabriel Jesus, I mean, that looks like an easy pass, but it's not. And he just gets something. He leaves with something every game. Like he's like, I'm going to leave here with something. Like he definitely does that. And you need players like that in your team, especially in a team that looks a little shy of goals right now. You need to have somebody that invigorates that group a little bit and gives the right passes at the right time and stuff like that. And so that's his third goal contribution in about 50 minutes of football, which is great. Only like two other Arsenal players have more assists than him, in his time at Arsenal. And he's pushing. He's pushing. I think he's highly thought of at Arsenal, especially by the manager. And he's the next guy up off the bench when we need to make a change in midfield. I think that says a lot, especially with Trossard there and Emil Smith-Rowe, so and I think he's earning that as well. Like before, it was a little bit more difficult because he wasn't playing well, but now that he's playing well, he's earning it. But that goal was sweet. Gabriel Jesus in on goal, just cool. Doesn't panic, chops whoever that was a Dallo. I don't know. His ankles were broken and his face was on the ground, so I couldn't see who it was. And he just slots it in the back of the net. 3-1 Arsenal. Are just, yeah. It was mad. Like, yeah. And getting a goal for Gabriel Jesus is so good, because we know how he struggles being clinical and how he gets in his head about scoring goals. And so it was nice for him to go into international break scoring a goal, which I love. Keenan says Dallo took the slip and slide to work today. That was so funny. Crispy says Vieira stocks are rising in value. Glad I didn't sell mine. I told y'all. Jason Miller says, big up in the chat, share and subscribe from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys make sure you guys are smashing the likes and all that kind of stuff. It really helps the channel grow, and we like that around here. Martin N says he's definitely redeeming himself. I agree. Samuel says Dallo ate the grass for the third goal. Very satisfying. It was very satisfying. Dale says Odegaard never has enough space. His assists need to be inch perfect. And that's the thing. It's like, if we can figure out a way to maximize the left mid position where the other team feels like they have to spread their resources around to make sure that that's if we could get somebody that they're afraid of on that side, then that would open up more space for Odegaard. But right now you can tell that teams are like, Odegaard, stop him. Whoever's inverting, try to limit their ability to get into central spaces. That's what was really hurting Partey from getting in those positions. It was easy to keep him kind of catacortered in that spot. Stop Saka. and let the left side be a mess. That's basically the game plan, is like, we will risk the left side not being good as long as we can stop the right side. And so if we could figure out how to make the left side dangerous, then we'll be in business, but that's going to take some decision making, I think, or a very big turn of events for Kai Havertz in terms of his form. Keenan says Rice carried our team on his shoulders today. It was crazy to watch. Give me Rodri vibes. And we've been saying that, like, you need a player like Rodri in your team that doesn't necessarily do the fun stuff, but is going to pop up with a really important goal here and there. And he did that. And so I love him. I really do. I really do. Dr. Omezia says some fans are suggesting using Havertz as right center mid rather than left center mid, which may mean Odegaard out of the team. I'd prefer that. It is an experiment upon the Carabao Cup, though. Yeah, like there. I think when he played at Leverkusen, he was mostly on the right-hand side. So, he is seeing the world in a way that he hasn't seen it before. Like, he's on the left side. He's with players he's never seen before. He's playing in a system he's never played before. And the last time he played 10/attacking mid, he was on the right. And so maybe it's something that we can try when Odegaard needs a rest or something like that. But, we have a couple of players that can play on that left-hand side. And, it doesn't look like a clean fit just yet. I would be interested to see Kai Havertz starting the game with Gabriel Jesus and see how that changes things. But I'm having a hard time with the, kind of lack of intensity, a little bit of the sloppiness. Like, it's frustrating to watch. And so as I'm frustrated, I just kind of want you out of my sight. But he may just need the right pieces around him, and he hasn't had those yet. He's played with different players almost every single game too. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, when I'm frustrated with somebody, I just want them out of my face. And right now, I just want him out of my face. So yeah. Franklin says, I like Eddie, but we should have taken him off in the 60th minute and bring on Jesus. Also, Nelson had a big impact in the game, plus Rice was outstanding. I forgot to mention that Nelson also did his Nelson, where he goes out there and he really drives the team forward. He's really direct. And I think that's so important when you're chasing a game or you're trying to win. You have to have players that are just going forward, attack. And I really like what Nelson brings off of the bench. So yeah, loved it. Loved it. So yeah, you guys, like, great win. There's still some questions. Like, I'm not about to sit here and act like all is good, all is well, but we sit 5th in the Premier League. We're tied with so many other teams: Liverpool, Spurs, West Ham, someone else maybe. But we're 5th. Going into the break, we haven't lost a game yet. We just played and won one of our first games against the Big Six. We have got to improve. But what I'm hoping is that this game gives the team some confidence and their shoulders drop and they relax and they come back from international break knowing that they're good and that they don't have to have all this stress so early on in the season. Aha says, amazing result today. Brilliant ending. We were shit today, though. Not gonna lie, though. Thought Dallo nullified Saka. Thought out of the starting 11, only Gabriel and Rice had good games. Fair enough. Keenan says, would love to see Trossard at right wing to give Saka competition. He is definitely two-footed. I think the thing is with Trossard, if you want him to play off of the right, you have to play a little bit differently. And what we tend to do is we play a system and we play players in different types of players. Like, Trossard is not like Saka or Martinelli. He's not. He's different. So you have to play differently and have different people around him to unlock him and make him better. And you can't expect Trossard to do what Saka's doing on that side. And when we first saw Trossard play on the right-hand side, he was basically being told to do what Saka does, and he couldn't do it. It wasn't the same. And so if we're going to play Trossard in either one of those wing positions, then there has to be different people around him, and we have to play a little bit differently to get the best out of him. Because Trossard is best when he comes into the half spaces and gets close to goal, but he cannot be on the touchline. And that's why it makes it hard to play him on the wings sometimes, because our wingers tend to be quite isolated. But yeah, you guys, I really enjoyed this a lot. There's 200 of you guys in here, 240 of you guys in here. So this is a really good show. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show as well. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. Obviously, we'll have more time to download all these types of things, but I love you guys. You guys are amazing. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.